Hi everybody, my name is Katie and I am the Community Literacy Program Director for Literacy Works, and I'm here with another training. This one was talking about voter engagement among adult learners, and we partnered with the Right Question Institute to focus on this one. They have incredible tools and really great lesson plans and activities for bringing voting awareness into your classroom or tutoring session. So I recommend watching the training. We go over one of their big tools called Why Vote. So you kind of focus on building a student-centered activity where students decide whether or not they should vote, and they come up with yes, we should vote, and they get to make that decision on their own. So I hope you check that out. But then I hope afterwards you go to the Right Question Institute and learn more. They have a ton of great activities and great resources for a lot of different topics, not just voting. They talk about everything else: healthcare, work, talking to your doctor, immigration issues, talking to your immigration lawyer, things like that. They're really about asking the right question, and they're really focused on student-centered work. So it's really great. We were really lucky that they got to do this training for us. Um, if you have any questions, again, my email is at the end of the video. Otherwise, enjoy.
I shared my screen, so are folks able to see the presentation? Getting a thumbs up, perfect.
So welcome to the Why Vote tool, reaching more voters in low-income communities. I'm Luz Santana, and I'm the co-director of the Right Question Institute. And I'm here with Jeja Adon, and Jeja is our program coordinator. And she will be handling a lot of the logistics in this session, as well as they will be pitching in about some points during this session. We'll be also reviewing some of your comments and questions. All right, so let's get it going, Jeja. And these are some of the things that we are planning to do in this webinar. This session is a sort of pack. So we will learn about a new model for engaging voters. And we will explore a nonpartisan, simple, and powerful tool to help people make the connection between the services that are important to them and voting. And very often we think about who can do this work. And we have seen so far that people working in the front lines, providing direct services work, direct services in low-income communities can play a very important role in getting more people to vote, and you fit that category. And then there are also voter engagement efforts who can integrate our strategy into the work that they do. So it is very exciting to have this opportunity to work with you today. Jay is going to go over some logistics. I'm going to talk a little about the work of the Right Question Institute. And then I will give you an experience in the Why Vote tool. I will take you through the step-by-step process of a very simple tool to engage people to vote. We will look at the tool and why it works, and then we're going to have a conversation about using the tool in your work. There will be times for questions and answers and an evaluation. And when we look at using the tool, or maybe I will do it before because we're going to have more of a conversation today rather than the actual webinar where we are very specific with our protocol. So there will be time and opportunities for you to speak up, to share your thoughts. You can also decide to share those in the chat box. But I would like to talk a little at some point about the work that my co-director Dan Rosta and I have done in the area of adult education. All right, Jeja?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll find a moment for that, Luz. And so before we hop in, we'll just do a quick logistics. One of them is that the Right Question Institute, all of our resources and methodology are available for free under a Creative Commons license. So folks are free to use them, to adapt them, as long as they source the Right Question Institute when they do so. And all our resources are available on our website, and we'll navigate later in the session to show you kind of where and how to locate them on our website, and also show some of our additional education resources as well. As we mentioned, it's an interactive webinar. It's a smaller group today. So essentially, often when people see this computer symbol, we ask them to engage within the chat. As we go through the experience of the tool, feel free to again to engage in the chat. That would be really helpful. But when we do a reflection and have some Q&A, you'll be able to come off chat if you would like. You can still obviously use the chat box if you want, but we can have folks come off and unmute themselves and have a conversation since it's such a small group. If you, well, this is not relevant, but if you did, when you're not on the webinar, essentially, if you want to send a question to everybody, it will already appear in the chat, as we know. Additionally, if you like to tweet, we do have a Twitter that is has a lot of information, especially for educators that kind of follow us. So we're at Right Question at Lou Santana 20. If you want to hashtag the Why Vote tool as you're using it, we can share those stories to our network of educators that follow us on Twitter. We love hearing those stories and retweeting, sharing them as well.
Yeah, and if you feel that you want to tweet during this session, please feel free to do that. Our staff loves the tweets.
Yes. Well, we already did intros a little bit, and you have our names as well. I know we had a new person join. If they would like to kind of do an intro themselves and come off mute, they can, but there's no pressure.
Yeah, so why don't you open again, and so people can very quickly share.
Wait, sorry, Luz, what was the first part of that?
Oh, can you open the microphone so people very quickly? I think that we have enough time for everybody to reintroduce very quickly.
Yeah, folks are able to unmute themselves if they would like.
Okay.
I am Wednesday. My pronouns are she and her, and I am in Chicago, Illinois.
Thank you, Wednesday.
I'll jump in. So I'm Janine, also Chicago, Illinois, and that is in Cook County, which is always good when you're voting to know your state, your county, all of the different things for voting. Your aldermanic district, your congressional district, there's a lot to know.
Thank you, Janine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wilfred, and I'm also from Chicago.
Okay, so Chicago in the house. Thank you, Wilfred.
Thank you.
All right.
And to progress, after the webinar, we will have an evaluation link that we'll send to you if you just like to give quick feedback about your experience. It helps us learn what we can do better or what we've done well, so we always appreciate that. Again, you're able to download all our free resources at rightquestion.org. We're always available for support as well, so if you hear something that is intriguing about the tool or education resources, we're always available. Our emails will be at the end of this presentation. And yes, look out for an email. We'll probably send for Katie to send an email kind of with these resources, our contact information again, so you have that as well.
Thank you, Jaja. So I would like to give you a brief overview of the work of the Right Question Institute. So we are a nonprofit and we work across issues. So we work in the area of education in the classroom, in healthcare, in social services, in innovation, and we also work in this area of voter engagement. And our work began back in the 90s. My co-director, Dan Rostan, and I were working in a low-income community north of Boston, Lawrence, Massachusetts, and I'm currently broadcasting from Lawrence, Massachusetts. And we were working in a dropout prevention program. and we work with low income and immigrant families. And as we work with the families, we heard from them not once, but about 1,000 times that they were not going to the school because they didn't even know what to ask. And when we heard that they had an issue about not knowing what to ask, we came up with the list of the questions that we thought that they should be asking, to learn that it was not about giving them the questions. When we gave the questions, rather than helping, we built dependency. And every time when they had an issue at the school, they used to come back and said, you know, what should I ask? So they used to come back to get the questions. And the parents basically identify an obstacle for people to be able to participate. And the work has gone a long way since they identified that not knowing what questions to ask was a problem. So we learned from them that it was about developing the skills so they could ask questions in all kinds of settings and situations. And we also learned that they were more effective also when they were able to identify decisions and then 3 specific areas of decision making: the reason for the decision, the process for making the decision, and how they could have a say in the decision-making process. So a lot came from that insight from parents, from people who are usually not quite respected on what they can contribute. And this is what has happened over the years. You want to go over this one, Jeja?
Yeah, I can totally. And so from the work at in Lawrence, Massachusetts, we spread our work across fields. And one of them is a book, Make Just One Change, Teach Students to Ask Their Own Questions, which came out of work in education. And essentially, it helps educators work with students to ask questions in the classroom and increase the skill of question formulation as a way of learning. It's been translated to several languages as well. Additionally, we've done work with NIH and turning question asking over to patients within healthcare. And from there, we've seen increased patient activation scores and health outcomes out of that research. With the Library of Congress, which we have a grant, which is teaching, let me lose which Library of Congress one again. I know that NSS one is teaching researchers to ask better questions, but Library of Congress was
is teaching with primary sources. It's for teachers to use primary sources to teach students how to ask their own questions.
Amazing. We additionally have a course with the Harvard Graduate School of Education as well that many educators attend.
Yeah, thank you, Jeja. So a lot from that insight from parents. I also have to share with you that a lot has come also from my experience. So years ago, I came from the Caribbean and I didn't know how to thread together 2 sentences in English. And not that I do that well today, but I'm able to manage. And at some point, I was a welfare recipient. My social worker really pushed me to help myself. And at some point, I landed in an adult education program. And I got, I think, that the most wonderful adult educators who figured out or thought that I was college material, and I sort of believed them. And I went on to college thanks to their motivation. Dan and I have also done quite a bit with adult education programs in helping adult educators integrate some of our processes into their work. So it was like this time of trial and failure, but we learned quite a bit about the opportunities to integrate the work, but also about the power of question formulation for adult learners. So today, the process that I will be sharing with you is not that comprehensive, but there are other resources in our website, plus another resource that we are about to put out tomorrow or the day after. That is a lesson for the classroom on how to formulate questions, but also thinking about voting. All right. All right, so this is the issue that we are addressing. It happens that the lower the income level of potential voter, the less likely they are to vote. And in 2016, fewer than half of eligible voters living below the poverty line voted, compared to 76% of eligible voters earning $75,000 or more. So you can see here the discrepancy between the income and who is voting. So to help with that, address some of that situation, we have developed the Right Question voter engagement strategy. And the strategy is very simple. It is a process to develop a sense of urgency and motivation to vote. So would you like to review this one, Jaja?
So what's different about the strategy? It is a complementary strategy that can be integrated into existing efforts. Really, we want to make that easy. So it's not rewriting what you're doing or coming up with a whole new curriculum. It's really an easy way to integrate it into your practice. It focuses on having people name the value of voting as of being told to what to do or think. And so really it's turning over the mic to folks versus giving information. And it leveraged hundreds of direct service programs around the country, essentially the work that is being done here, where there's these one-on-one interactions where it's possible to have these conversations. But also, again, it's complementary and it's integrated in different ways as well.
All right, and here is the Why Vote tool. As you can see, it is a very simple two-pager, almost a handout. But don't be deceived by what you see because it is packed with power. All right, so let's begin our interactive part of the session. So I'm going to ask you to either share in the chat box or to speak up. So you will unmute yourself and will share if you like. All right, so let's begin by looking at some government-funded services. And the services are in the areas of housing, income support, healthcare, schools, jobs, courts, children, adult education, and neighborhood. And there might be others that we are not listing here. So what I would like you to do is to look at the list and choose which 3 services do you think are most important to people you work with or who live in your community. You have the option of choosing the general category or very specific services. And if you don't see a service listed here or at a category, please feel free to add it. So have a minute, let's choose 3 services you think are most important to people that you work with or to people in your community.
Janine says Social Security, SSI, Medicaid, utility assistance.
Thank you.
Kitty says neighborhoods, childcare, housing.
Thank you.
Wednesday says housing and healthcare.
Thank you.
And adult education as well.
All right, so let's move this to a next step. And let's look at the role of elected officials. Elected officials make decisions that affect all these services. By voting, people you work with or in your community can have a say in who's making these decisions. So why would it be important for people to see for themselves the connection between the services they receive and decisions elected officials make. Why would it be important for people to see for themselves the connection? And please feel free to write in the chat box or open up your mic, unmute yourself and share.
I think it's important because I think, at least right now, something that I'm seeing is a lot of people feel really hopeless and really kind of completely disengaged. I think a lot of people have the feeling that like no matter how they vote or no matter like what they do, they can't have any kind of effect on the like larger systems that like govern our society. So then that causes people, when people feel like no matter what they do, their action is ineffective, then they just disengage from the system.
Thank you. So I see that there were comments from Janine and from Wilfred.
Yes, Wilfred says, because then they would see their voices can make a change and affect their communities. From Janine, decision making through voting or petitioning / reaching out to public officials. Sorry, I missed the first part. Potentially, they would be empowered to affect decision making.
Thank you.
And I think just from my experience of working with people with the census, just explaining the connections, it seems like it doesn't matter until you say, oh, but actually it affects all these things that actually are important to you. So it's important to see why it does matter, more than just saying complete your census, but here's why.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's think about some questions about voting. So what questions do you think they might have about actually voting? Please come up with as many questions as you can. And this time I'm going to ask you to write them in the chat box. And Jeja will be reviewing them. And when you share, make sure that you share with all panelists and attendees.
We'll just share with everyone since it's not technically a webinar, which is the default, which is nice. From Janine, how do I vote? When can I vote? Can I vote? Does my vote make a difference? Do I need an ID to vote? Am I only voting for president? Do I have to pay to vote? Why would I vote all politicians are the same? Where do I vote? Can I vote at a place near my work?
All right, so let's move to a next step and let's reflect on the experience for a minute. So you thought about government services that affect people's lives, reflected on the connection between these services and decisions elected officials make, and asked questions about people might have about actually voting. So a lot of work in a short period of time. So let's think for a second about what did you learn or what thoughts do you have? What are you thinking now after going through the experience? And we have the option of the chat box, or you can speak up.
I definitely think even though it was a short little burst of questions, thinking about all the questions that someone could ask you is really important for preparing on how to talk about it. Because and even if you get really creative with all the questions you might think of, it really helps you think like, do I even know the answer to that? Or do I know where to go for that information? That was helpful.
Thank you.
I found that writing the questions and reading the other questions just brought up more questions for me. And I'm also thinking about, the folks that we work with are mostly ESL. And, the English issue that there's a lot of down ballot stuff, They know how to vote. Voting for president's the easy part, because they see those names. But the down ballot initiatives can have an even greater effect on their life. For example, in Illinois, there's a fair tax balloting, and on the Constitution, and we haven't had one of those in forever. So, will they really understand what that saying yes or no to that would be? Will they just skip it? So this is just for me, the questions that come up for English learners are probably going to be the most relevant.
Thank you, Janine.
Looking at it too, I was just thinking about how actually kind of difficult it is and complicated it is to vote. And I think here in Chicago, like, we're fairly lucky, like we've had vote by mail for just established for like a long time. But still, the fact that you have to like register, and then you can only go to one place, and it's a place that's like close to where you live, but if you don't work close to where you live, then it is then that might not be convenient. And then, I mean, a nice thing about Chicago too is that we have like early voting also, and still, even with like vote by mail and early voting, it still is like work to vote, which is hard. And I think, like people who are like low income or dealing with like challenges in life, like already are probably like feeling very exhausted. And so anything that is any kind of like extra work for them, like just that's already a barrier to them like participating. And then also like people, especially people who are living in poverty, like have kind of like neurologically are kind of living in like survival mode all the time, which makes it difficult to like plan for the future or like like take action for the future. So all of those things are kind of like conspiring to make it hard for people to vote.
Thank you, Wednesday. All right. So here are the components of the Why Vote tool and why it works. So it is a 5-step process, allows people to name for themselves the value of voting. It helps develop a sense of urgency to participate and vote. And it is a non-partisan strategy that encourages all people to vote, but it doesn't encourage people to vote for a specific candidate. And that's why many nonprofits can use it. It also gives space for people to ask questions and identify obstacles to voting. All right, and again, here is how the tool that is used with adult learners, clients, people in the community, how it looks. And the design is informed by pilot work in different states around the country that we have done over the years. So we have been learning from people using our strategy, and what we have done for this election year is to condense those lessons and share them in this tool. Before, we used to have a workshop model, and we still have a workshop model available. And now with the classroom lesson, it is more or less like doing, a workshop. So here it is in page 1, people review the range of services that might be available to them, and they choose the 3 that are most important. By choosing, they are prioritizing, and when they prioritize, they are learning a skill that they can apply to other areas. And there is also some sense of ownership because they choose services that they care about. So in page 2, again, the process is very simple. So we introduce just a small amount of information. Elected officials make decisions that affect all the services. And by voting, you can have a say in who's making those decisions. And you know, like sometimes we give a lot of information to people, trying to get them to understand, trying to get buy-in. So what we do here is that we provide the minimum so they will stay focused. And that way you are not overwhelming them with tons of information that they cannot digest or internalize. So the key here is to provide very little to accomplish more. And then based in this, on that small amount of information, we ask them to reflect and to think about why would you want to vote and have a say in who's making those decisions. So they think about the reasons for voting themselves, rather than telling them, you know, you should vote because the your services might be cut or they might not be funded. So it is for them to realize that it is important. And you know, like Wednesday was talking earlier, you know, people are going through a lot and they might be or thinking, you know, is it worth it? Would my vote make a difference? But here, because it is related to things that they care about, it is more likely that they will be able to make that connection and see value about voting. And then there is an opportunity for asking questions about being able to vote. So here we create that space for them to think about what they want to know and to set a learning agenda about the information that they want to get. So this is, again, rather than giving them information that we think is important, it is about helping them identify and define what they want to know. And I'm going to share quickly some examples of the questions that we have heard. Can I bring my kids with me? What if I don't know what to do? Can I get help? What if I make a mistake? And will I get punished? And these are not the only questions. There have been many more, but we chose this to show that very often people have some fear about voting and not knowing what to do with their kids, and then whether they will make a mistake and if they will get punished. And the last 2 questions, they refer to some of the experiences that low-income people very often have when they are navigating services. They might feel the application the wrong way, and you know, they will feel the repercussions of making that mistake. And I have also seen the question, if I, damage the ballot, I will be able to get another one? And it's going again to that thing about making the mistake and having that fear. All right, at the end, there is always a reflection. When you use our strategy, always a reflection. We ask people, what did you learn? And sometimes they will not name that they learned anything, but the goal here is for them to think about the work that they did, the different steps in the process, and whether they got something out of it. And sometimes people don't name anything, but later on they start thinking, oh, that thing that I learned, I can use it here and there. So this reflection allows them to apply what they have learned and then further application. So I recommend all the time to people, oh, don't ever cut the reflection from your process, because if you do, your participants will be missing something that is very important. And then you might be saying right now, all right, so there are a lot of questions. So what do I do with the questions? So the last step in the process is to connect people with information about voting. And you know, in your work, you might already have resources. There might be resources in your community that will be willing to come to talk with students, might be willing to get a telephone call or to contact them. And plus also there are all the national resources that you can right now log in and find all kinds of information. All right, so we went through the tool, we looked behind the tool. So what are your thoughts now on the Whiteboard tool? And again, you can feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself and share. So yeah, we have a comment.
Yeah, Virginia, the questions that came up for learners are very enlightening, but I think that was just a comment from earlier on. And then some thoughts. I love that it's so student-centered in its approach. Virginia, I like the idea that the students can use their thinking skills to come up with questions.
I like that it encourages the students to kind of like find their own value in voting, or it can like open up a conversation about like why maybe students don't find value in voting right now and what could help them find value in it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
There's one other question or comment. I'm wondering, as an ESL teacher, about English levels and how accessible it is for lower levels. And then from Wilfred, I think a tested tool like this can be beneficial. It may make them feel listened to.
Thank you all. So this is what happens when you use the tool. There are changes at different levels. There are changes on what people know, how they feel and what they are able to do. And in the no area, they they know why it's important to vote and how the services that they receive connect to voting. And they also know about the role of elected officials and information they want to get. And in the field, they feel that they should have a say and they feel much more confident and more urgency to vote. And indeed, they ask questions to find information, and many of them actually vote. So we have seen all those things happening when this tool and our voter engagement strategy is applied. And Jay, are you gonna go through those?
Yeah, so let's go back, know, feel, and do. And we wanted to highlight what Lucia said with some quotes from the field, and I'll read those off to everybody. In terms of cognitive changes and what people know, it's at the welfare office that we learn our voices doesn't count. But after the Right Question Institute's workshop, I see that our voices do count and we need to vote. I see that if I don't vote, then other people are going to keep on making decisions for me. This gives me a chance to have a say in who's going to be making those decisions. In terms of effective changes or in what people feel, I have never voted. I feel really strong about voting now. It would make a difference. It made me feel that voting is very important, so your voice can be heard. And then changes in behavioral or what people do. I think it's really important to do the right of vote, and I will vote for the next presidential election. And this was from an adult education teacher in Pennsylvania. I don't think I have ever had a student who has voted before. After doing the workshop, many students actually voted. They came back really proud. They went to the county elections and voted for the school board. It actually makes a difference.
All right, so here are some suggestions about how to use the Why Vote tool. And again, this tool was designed for quick use. There are other resources that you can use if you have more time, but you can use it as a script, and you can use it while you are doing tutoring. This can be an icebreaker for the conversation. It can be used with community volunteers. Students can learn it and share it with their neighbors and relatives and so on. You can use it as a handout that can be distributed to students. And then it can be a template for exploring the issue of voting, and then having some follow-up activities, doing research or gathering information. And it can be a lesson plan for the students as well.
And I think,
Oh, Jeja?
Oh, I was going back to Janine's comment about literacy level, and as an integration, as a script, this allows for it to be read to somebody so they can participate as well. So it's accessible in that way. Additionally, later on, we kind of have some additional resources we'll share. But one of them is a video in which folks could listen and go through the activity. And when it was asking them one of those questions, they would be able to type and if they feel comfortable, or they can just listen and write down on their own as well. So we kind of built some scaffolding in there as well.
All right, so there are some very simple things in using the tool. Simple, but at the beginning might be a bit challenging to do. So it is not about giving people lots of information about voting at the beginning of the conversation, which very often we have a tendency to do. It's about giving a small of information to keep their focus. It is not about telling them they should vote or trying to convince them to do so. It is allowing them to get to their own conclusion about why should they do it. And it is not about deciding what information to provide. It is allowing them to set up the agenda about what they want to know based on their questions. And I think that these ideas come from other work that we have done over the years, in which we realized that for people to be able to take action, one of the first things that they had to do was to become aware. And once they become aware, they start paying attention. When they pay attention, they gather information, and they do all those things before taking action. And we have seen over and over that very often you introduce people to an idea and it takes some time to sink in, especially if they haven't had the opportunity to think on their own, and if they are accustomed to be fed with information, or if they are accustomed to people doing things for them. So it's a small shift for both the people who are sharing the tool, but also to the recipient. All right, some best practices in using the tool. So you want to go through those, Jeja?
Yeah, I can totally go through them. So if possible, we recommend that you lead people through the step-by-step process, again, if that's possible. One cardinal rule, as we've stressed, is that you're presenting it to them. You're not telling them what they should be thinking, doing, or asking. If you are going to give information related to voting, polling place, registration, or any other additional information, to do it after guiding the participant through all the steps of the process. So that's that their focus is on the process itself, not all the information that may come.
Yeah, thank you, Jaja. Yeah, customize.
And we can customize and build into your work. You know best about your setting community, and we'll actually kind of hop into some thinking around that next.
Mm.
And so essentially, what we always learn in our work is that people in the field know best how to integrate resources into their work. We love creating them, but folks know how to use them. And so success of it is going to be dependent on the method you choose for your setting.
Mm.
And we want to ask, as you think about everything you've learned, how could you use this tool in your work or in your community? And this will be another interactive component. You can type in the chat or you can come off mute as well.
Yeah, think about it for the second. And I'm sorry, I have to check the door.
I think this tool is the reason that I saw this training first and wanted to bring it to our members is I just feel like it's a really easy thing to put in the hands of tutors. I think teachers would have a field day with this and do all this other stuff, but sometimes tutors just kind of want something ready-made. And I think it's really easy. So I feel like this tool will just be an easy way to boost voter engagement and all these without a lot of background and not a lot of knowledge about what to do, but just kind of putting this. And I think for our work is mostly reliant on volunteers. So having something that we could just give volunteers, I think that would make a big difference.
Luz, you're muted just because of the door, so if you mute yourself.
There are some guides and resources in our website that will facilitate that process, and Jaja will be walking us through some of the resources in a bit.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that this looks like the kind of thing that because we don't even before, now that it's the pandemic, this doesn't really happen, but even before the pandemic, we don't have a large class that our learners come together in. The overwhelming majority of them are working one-on-one with the tutor. So this is something that we could give to their individual tutor and they could just do it one-on-one together.
Thank you. All right, so let's keep thinking about potential integration.
Well, yeah, and if there's thoughts that come up in the Q&A section about questions about integration, I mean, that's a perfect time as well. But we want to talk about Nonprofit Vote. One of the organizations that we've worked with, there are a large national nonprofit that works with nonprofit organizations and social service agencies to promote voter participation. Their niche being that they are nonpartisan and help these nonpartisan organizations engage in those efforts. And so they actually do give information about voting. And they've kind of worked with us because we have noticed that the tool is a great primer for information. So as it allows folks to set their agenda, and then Nonprofit Vote is able to work to provide information. So we've been able to work with them and kind of coordinate and integrate our work into theirs as they work with other agencies across the country. It's also a great resource if you're thinking about questions about voting. We encourage you to check out Nonprofit Votes as they really do have a lot.
All right. So, so here we have a photo of of a woman who has inspired our work, one of the greatest educators from the 20th century. And probably you recognize the woman sitting on the right of this picture. That is Rosa Parks. and almost everybody knows about her. The woman on the left, that is Septima Clark. And Septima was a teacher in the South Carolina public schools. And she was fired from her job due to her involvement with the civil rights movement and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And when Septima was fired, she founded the citizenship schools to help adults learn how to read and write, and especially Black people. And she did that because that was their only ticket to advocate for higher wages, but also to be able to vote. And standing in this picture, you can see her cousin, Bernice Robinson. They were like in this beauty salon, and they were teaching people how to develop their skills. And Septima said that we need to be taught to study rather than to believe, to inquire rather than to affirm. And those are very important things to do in order to strengthen democracy, having that ability to think and inquire on our own.
So this essentially is going to kind of wrap up with some end logistics. I'll show you some resources, and then we'll have time for Q&A for this next portion. But if anything to take away from today's session, it is the YVote tool and strategy, a tool you can integrate into your work and make yours. And we have this cool new thing that's happening, which is our YVote classroom lesson. It's super exciting. I'll turn over to Luz to talk a little bit about it.
Yes, there are teachers in the field who are waiting for this lesson plan to be available. And like I mentioned earlier, I just hope that by tomorrow afternoon, the day after, that we will have it completely ready. And this is a tool in which people will use the full question formulation technique process. And if you are not familiar with the question formulation technique, it's a step-by-step process where students will learn to produce questions, improve their questions, and look at different types of questions. They will prioritize, they will establish next steps with the questions, and then they will reflect. So what we did was to do a combination of the YVote tool with a full question formulation technique. And the lesson can be delivered in one session, but also teachers can split it and use it in different segments depending on their class time period. So as you can see, within that tool, students will use the full question formulation technique. They will examine issues and services that are more important to them. They will write an argumentative piece explaining their answer. They will do research, and they will create a PSA for family and friends. So this is connected with some writing, but teachers can also use it for other purposes as well.
Additionally, we have the YVote tool for work with youth. I know folks are probably working with adults that are 18 plus. Whoever this one is, just the twist is examples of key issues versus services. So it still can be used in a variety of settings as well. It's just the focus has changed. Additionally, as I mentioned, we have our online versions of the tool. And so this is a video that folks can play and listen to and interact with the video and answer those questions within the video. We have a new and updated version of it coming pretty soon that's super intuitive and user-friendly that we're excited to share. I also will stop sharing my screen so I can navigate to a different screen and do a new share. Well, so I guess it just seamlessly transitions, which I enjoy. And so can everybody see the website? And so essentially, if you're trying to find our resources, the easiest way is to navigate to our resources tab and navigate down to voter engagement. And click on that. Here you'll be able to see all the tools we just talked about. So this is an interactive tool with a video that is just listening to Luz walk somebody through the Whiteboard tool. Additionally, the tool itself, as well as our toolkit, which kind of includes the tool, a user guide, a one-page overview of how the tool works, and links to additional voting resources if folks needed to kind of in that last bracket add some additional resources.
So there is a package that you can share with the tutors.
Essentially. Additionally, I wanted to show, or we want to navigate through some of the education resources, correct?
Yes.
So same idea, where you can go to resources and to teaching and learning. And this is where you can find some of our education resources on the QFT, the question formulation technique, where they have the QFT, a video guide, a lesson planning workbook, a QFT PowerPoint template, so folks can really just quickly use that, integrate it into their classroom and into their work as well. We also have a lot of different, in terms of Q focus ideas, which is an aspect of the question formulation technique, and classroom examples. Our ed team does a lot of great work across the country, so they have a really lovely and expansive examples of teachers and videos and examples, which is really nice.
And in fact, the work that we began with adult educators many years ago has expanded to about 1 million classrooms around the world.
Awesome. Navigate back. Should be the PowerPoint now. Thumbs up. It's the perfect. So in terms of next steps, help us reach new voters. If you can share it with others, invite 5 people to our next webinar, which will be kind of in early October. It'll be kind of this, but in a large webinar setting. So more chats, less coming off mute, but we do like these intimate settings. Become a partner and receive support in using the tool. Again, we're always available. If you have questions, you're not quite sure how to utilize it, or you want to modify, but you want to make sure that the ethos stays the same, we're here for that. And let us know how you and others are using the tool. We love to hear stories, to share them, to kind of, similar to the ed team, really gather these examples to inspire others. We love to hear those and come back. And essentially, if you are into Twitter or tweeting, we're always there. I know it's a pretty niche idea, but we love to hear those stories on the Twitter. Essentially, you can complete our evaluation. I'll type this into the chat for people. It's pretty quick. It's helpful for us. Look out for an email that kind of has a recording of this webinar and resources that we will share that can, pretty much are the tool and our emails as well. And so this concludes it, and we can kind of move into any Q&A that we have. And I'll put this URL into the chat for the evaluation as well.
All right, so it is time for questions. Thank you, Jeja.
We have a question from Wilfred. Is the next webinar open to the public?
Yes, all webinars are public and they are free as well. So, and maybe we can send Jeja a tentative schedule of what we have.
Yeah, I can share it with Katie, kind of our next webinar and the link to register as well.
Thank you.
That's always good to hear. Jean says, I think you did a good job because I don't have any more questions right now.
Well, they might come to mind later. So make sure that you write to us and let us know what you want to ask. and we will do our best to answer quickly.
And like I said at the beginning, I will be sending out a recording of this and we'll post it on the website as well. So then if you have colleagues or even just want to share, tell your tutors to go and check this out. They can have that resource too. And then I'll get anything that is sent to me from them. I will make sure that gets sent out to you too.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for your time, and thank you for Janine and Wilfred and Wednesday for joining us. I appreciate you so much. It's a small group, but I know it was powerful for me. And I've already seen this training, but I'm like, yeah, I'm like energized again. I think the Right Question Institute is awesome. So I hope that they do so much more than just voting. They have so much going on, as you could see. So I recommend checking it out. I think it's like a really cool way to stay student focused, working with popular education and thinking about how we support our students to get the education they want instead of just forcing something on them. So it's a great.
Thank you. And as you know, you can play such an important role in the lives of your students. And I know that you are not doing the work because what you get paid. So I know that there is some passion for what you do and commitment, and I commend you for what you do, because again I was a recipient of that great work that you are doing right now. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, yeah, for sharing this tool with us.
Thank you, Wednesday. Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Wilfred.
Thank you.
Hopefully I'll see you all at the next training, but otherwise, and if you have any questions that come up later, reach out to them, reach out to me, we'll get it answered.
Excellent. Thanks.
Thanks.